And I believe it is 1 o'clock. So, hello everybody. This is your Council President Felicia Moore. It's so great to be with you all in this virtual environment. We always have to do our best to try to stay connected. For those of you who tune in on Facebook, thank you. Others don't have Facebook, so as you know, we included YouTube. And so I will be looking at my YouTube feed as well to see if there are comments or questions from the public. And we just recently added Twitter. And I'm just trying to figure that out. Hopefully, I will see any comments that come up on Twitter as well. But wonderful day today, even though it is raining outside. I hope everyone's staying safe, their power is staying on, etc. So there's several things I want to talk about, and Katie wants me to talk about a workforce. And so if you have a specific question, Katie, I would encourage you to type it. So when I get to that point, I will specifically talk about that. But the first thing I want to mention, this is so extremely important because people want things. You all contact and you want things, you want services, you want money for, as I'm sure Katie's calling about, for a work source, other opportunities for people. Well, a lot of this money comes from the federal government or the state government. And in order to get that, how is apportioned between other cities and people is a lot of it's based on population. And where do they get those numbers from? They get those numbers from the census. And it's extremely important that you fill it out. It's also important for your representation because we also have to redraw or reapportion our districts based on census numbers. And so people could be unfairly represented if people aren't counted in that district. So there's so many other ways and reasons why the census is important. It has been moved up, and it's unfortunate, but we are Georgia is in the 49th place across all of the states in the nation for self-response, and the city of Atlanta is not doing well at all. I really encourage people, if you still put aside that envelope, mail that they've given you from the Census Bureau, pick it up, mail it in if you can, or go online and fill out the census. It only takes you maybe 3 minutes. So please go. My staff will post on the chat the link to the census. But please take the census. It's so important to us as a city to be able to fulfill your needs. And in this COVID environment, our needs are going to be great. So you can call. The number is 844-330-2020. That's 844-330-2020. You can go online at my2020census.gov. And you can mail it if you still have your mailed information. Please be counted. So the next thing I want to mention is about the COVID response. As some of you may know, the mayor had a press conference via virtual, and she mentioned that we're moving back to phase 2. You know, she had moved us to phase 1 because the numbers in the city and the state were not looking good. And so we're now easing that, moving back to phase 2, and we'll be keeping a lot of eyes on the numbers as we get into the flu season. Please make sure you get your flu shots. It's extremely important that you do that, and just make sure that you're following the precautions. There's too many people who are not taking this seriously, particularly our youth in the 19 to 29 year age. Those numbers are growing exponentially. And also, many of them are asymptomatic. They may have it and don't know it. And what they're doing is going home to their grandmothers, to their mothers, to their brothers and sisters, and they're spreading it. And they don't even know that they're doing it. So I'm just asking everybody to please be cautious. If you know someone who's in that age range, you might want to ask them what they've been taking those precautions and wearing their mask. And you may want to social distance from them until you're sure of that. So COVID is really important. Please, we will post some information on that if you want more information about what does phase 2 mean. As I understood from her, there are 5 phases. And so we're back to phase 2. And so hopefully we'll continue 3, 4, and 5, and 5 being that everything's open and pretty much everything is the way that it used to be. So you can go to Atlanta Strong, ATL Strong, I think it is, .org, atlstrong.org for more information on the phases that we're in. So some current news before I get to some of your questions and comments. You all saw yesterday where it was publicly announced that our former city CFO, which stands for Chief Financial Officer, has been indicted on several charges of wire fraud, theft, and gun charges. So, that is unfortunate. This was in the prior administration, and there are still other investigations ongoing. As you know, that there have been a plethora of subpoenas that have been issued. And so I fully expect that there may be more indictments to come. It seems like now that COVID is a bit easing up, the grand jury is back in session and meeting. So just understand that there probably will be more, and I expect to be more indictments to come as we go through dealing with and trying to clear this cloud of corruption that's been over City Hall for the last 3.5, almost 4 years now. And so I do want you to know that the council, as well as your council president, have been keenly aware as things have gone on and as we have found issues to try to find ways to tackle them. I do remember Councilmember Andre Dickens put in legislation about credit card usage. That was a part of the indictment, how the former CFO used his credit card. And so there was a revamping of the credit card issue. I authored and Councilmember Dickens sponsored on my behalf because as a president, I can't introduce legislation. Legislation that I authored to create independent procurement review officers. And those are people that are keenly looking at our procurements over $1 million or more, or selected ones. They start from the beginning of the process, they go to the end, they issue a report, and that report has to be attached to the legislation so that the council has an opportunity to look at someone independently reviewing how we procure our goods and services. And if there have been problems or issues in the procurement process, that gives them the tools they need to be able to stop and ask questions or either turn down that solicitation. Also, I authored and Councilmember Jennifer I sponsored and carried home the independent compliance officer, where we will have someone that will hold elected officials, city employees, and others accountable for following the code and the charter. Many of the things that we're seeing are clear violations of the code and the charter of the city of Atlanta. So it started with that. The mayor did a task force on independent compliance. After that, they wanted to change the name to Inspector General, or add an Inspector General, which was a part of the first conversation. And so Jennifer, I carried it home along with other council members. We will be having Inspector General as well as a Chief Compliance Officer, and the independent procurement review officers I talked about earlier will become a part of that. And these people will be working to hold people accountable. And I'm proud to have been one to author the initial legislation and get that ball rolling. I'm looking forward to an independent board that we have, which used to be the ethics board, which is now expanded to include ethics and all those things I just mentioned. They are now in the process of doing a national search, and I think they may be down to some of the finalists that they're interviewing to become the Inspector General. And so hopefully that gets started sooner than later, because transparency, ethics, and accountability are some of the things that I've always been harping on, and I'm looking forward to making sure that we have people that can hold all of us, myself included, accountable to following the law. Let's see, I talked about the census, please fill it out, and COVID. Want to remind everybody that September is National Suicide Awareness Month. You've probably seen a lot on social media related to that. It's also known as Suicide Prevention Month. It's the month to bring awareness to the topic. It's not often talked about, but it's there and it's real. And particularly in this COVID environment where people are locked up, maybe having a little sense of depression, we really need to be keenly aware of it. It impacts families and friends and loved ones that people may know. So please, if you know someone who needs help, we will post that information. The suicide prevention hotline is 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. And we also post the link. And then my final announcement, which is a very important one, is for people to vote. If you want to see the world to be the way that you want it to be, then you need to make sure that you're voting for elected officials that have the issues that you have in mind and that you know are going to work for you. So we have a big election coming up in November for our President of the United States, and also our constitutional congressional seats. If you want to vote in that election, October 5th is the deadline. If you have not registered, please register to vote. I also encourage you to check and make sure your current registration is still there. Sometimes people get thrown off and they don't know why, and it may have been a mistake, but just make sure you're current. You can visit the Secretary of State's website so that you can fill in it. I did it. It only takes a few minutes online, and you can request an absentee ballot so that you don't have to go to the polls in this COVID environment. And if you do that, I encourage everybody to do that, whether you decide to go to the polls or not, because you'll have two options. One, you can have that ballot, you can fill it out. I know some people are leery of the post office, but you can also put it in a drop box. And if we get those locations, we'll post that on my website. But you can put it directly in a drop box so you don't have to worry about if the postal service is slow and not getting it there on time for you. And then if you already have that ballot, you can make a decision if you're just one of those who want to physically go to the polls. If the lines are extremely long and you don't want to stand in them during early voting or other things, you may decide, you know what, I have my ballot. I'm going to go ahead and drop it in the drop box or put it in the mail before and postmark before Election Day. Also, remember, for those who are in the 5th Congressional District, the special election early voting began September 8th. It goes through September 25th. I went to the C.T. Martin Recreation Center, was in and out in no time. Please make sure don't forget that. That is to fill the unexpired term of John Lewis. So if you're in the 5th Congressional District, you've got an additional thing you need to vote for. Now, let me go to my phone and see. Okay. Sure, I don't. All right, let me go to my phone and let me see who is. I know Katie had some questions, so she may have. Let me go to the beginning. Oh, okay, Katie must have, or either I'm not seeing it. But you asked about WorkSource. So Katie, if you could retype your comment if you had something in particular, because my phone is not giving me all of the comments. So I don't know if anyone else asked me any particular questions. I don't know why it's not showing me all of my comments, and I don't see any on Twitter, and nor do I see any on YouTube. Okay, here we go. All right, Katie, thank you. How will we guarantee that WorkSource doesn't lose the city $1.3 million again. So let me explain how WorkSource Atlanta operates within the city. First of all, it's a federally funded program, and it has a board of directors that directs the operations. However, the whole operation of WorkSource Atlanta operates from out of the mayor's office or under the sort of the umbrella of the mayor's office. The council involvement with WorkSource comes in where the council has to approve accepting grant money, etc., and also for oversight, another layer of oversight, even though there's already a board attached to WorkSource Atlanta. So how do we guarantee that these things, there's no guarantees in life, but one, I would hope, and I'm sure they have to be thinking in terms of the mayor's office on how we can work to do that. They do have a new executive director, and thank you to our staff for just sending me a text. You asked whether it's under WorkSource, and I'll get to that in a minute. So there's a new executive director who's in place, and I believe that we need to make sure the executive branch, the mayor's office, needs to make sure all of the board appointments are made and that the board is meeting. I'd heard that there were some issues with that. So there was a proposal from the mayor's office to place WorkSource Atlanta under the Invest Atlanta. And I have heard, so this is just rumor, anecdotally, they're sort of working with, or WorkSource Atlanta is working with Invest Atlanta. But to this date, I do not believe the Department of Labor has approved that new structure yet. And I have not heard that that has been formally approved. So I would say they're working in conjunction with Katie, without knowing that it hasn't necessarily been formally adopted. I see there's some other comments. Let's see. President Moore, this is Jay's son. Last night in Westview, we had a tragedy as a neighbor was killed by a falling tree. Is there anything the city can do to assist low-income residents remove problem trees? The family says the tree reported the tree multiple times, including 2 days ago to 311. So I'm not sure if the tree is on private property, the private property owners would have to remove it. If it was on city property, then I know that we've had a backlog in the past, but I'm not sure if 311. So you have to let me know whether it was on city property or whether it was on private property. If it was on city property, our parks department removes them. A lot of times there's a backlog of trees on public property that have to be removed. There is no fund to assist low-income residents on tree removal. People have to realize that you have to get the permit and pay for it if it's on your property. I'm sorry, a text came up and I lost my train of thought. But just let me know if you know more about the tree, whether it was on private property or not. And I know you have to get a permit, and sometimes people have a hard time getting permit. I got a text about whether or not you were asking Katie about the $2 million, and I'm not sure what $2 million you're referring to. So if somebody could text me or let me know what $2 million they're referring to, it would be helpful, and I can answer that question. If you're having issues with Airbnb in your neighborhood, who can you contact other than APD? You can call 311. It's the non-emergency number, and they can assist you. However, if it's a current noise issue, I know that people call the 911 number. It may be a low priority call of something else of a violent nature or other thing is going on, but the police will respond to noise complaints if there's a loud party or something like that. Other than that, you can also call 311. What monies have the city of Atlanta given WorkSource? Again, WorkSource is a federally funded program. So the money that the city receives comes through federal and state entities. The only money that the city has given, unfortunately, has been when a federally funded program, whether it's WorkSource, whether it's HOPWA, which is Housing Opportunity for People with AIDS, or any housing programs, when we get dinged by the federal government for not being in compliance, the city has had to go into our general fund to pay back those monies if they ask for it. But there's no direct funding to WorkSource from the city because the city receives the funding for WorkSource through the federal government. I hope that answers your question, Katie. If not, ask me. So Lawrence says, Council President, local neighborhood fundraising efforts to help our own neighbors like to address tragedy on Westwood last night. GoFundMe at Deer Park to raise funds. Jason says, yes, ma'am. We will follow up with you and Councilwoman Boone, okay? And Lawrence says the tree, I assume, was on private property, but it was reported and no one from city checked for a permit. So I don't know if the private property owner tried to get a permit and they were denied a permit, or they never asked for a permit to have it torn down, take the tree taken down. And unfortunately, tree removal is a very expensive proposition. And so sometimes people just kind of let it go. I know I've had to talk to my neighbors about trees on their property that I'm concerned about, and I still have one more to get them to get removed. But you know, we are a tree city, and we have a beautiful tree canopy, and there are a lot of people that are in support of trees. But we also need to make sure those trees are healthy, because when these storms come through, they can fall. And the tragic situation that happened, I would like to send my condolences to the family. I know that is a tragic and unexpected event. Let's see. Let's see. I think there may have been another question. Let me check. I think she said Miss Howell had a question. I will see if I can find that. I don't see it. So, Ms. Howell, if you could resend your question. I don't see any coming through on YouTube, and I don't see any on Twitter. I have one viewer on Twitter. We're new to Twitter, so whoever you are as the viewer, thank you. I think it may be me. We are expanding it to other things. But you know, there's a lot that needs to that's going on in the city. I want to remind everybody that your city council is still hard at work, working remotely, working from their home. City Hall physically is closed to the public, but we are still meeting. Please, if you have not already, some of you are on Facebook, or certainly on my Facebook page probably, but share it with others and have people to join the page, because I post a lot of information. I post information related to the city, the meetings where you can call in to give public comment, also articles of interest. I see that other people have are mentioning me in a comment, so I want to make sure. Let's see. Somebody is, you all commenting so many different ways. Somebody sending me a text. That's just the fifth thing I have to do. So you're watching live and you want to know what the city is doing to encourage the water boys off the corners at nighttime. I don't know specifically what the enforcement actions are. There is a curfew for young people. Sometimes it's enforced, sometimes it's not enforced. And I think that it's a case by case basis. If there are issues, People, if you call 911, the police will respond. I don't know that there's any specific program. I do know I've had some people that have contacted me with concern that kids were selling water during times which they should be getting their virtual learning. And I heard, I guess it was in the Public Safety Committee, that question being asked to the chief, and he said that they were reaching out to the APS, Atlanta Public Schools Resource Officer, to see if they are working on that issue as well. So Jill is asking me if small gatherings are still limited to 10 in phase 3, and I believe it's 10, but go to ATL Strong and it will break it out. One of the things I'm figuring out is even though we have these phases and restrictions, people are just not paying attention to them. And that's unfortunate. But I do think I heard the mayor say that in this phase, the people can start applying for permits again for small socially gathered events. So Lauren says the city, let's see, the city's legislation authorized the ADUs in neighborhoods become allowed them to become Airbnbs. The intent behind that legislation was to increase density with our neighborhoods. What do we do about the fact that there are so many ADUs are being used? What are ADUs? I just don't want to pretend like I know what you're talking about. Are being used for Airbnbs rather than for rental units. And I'm assuming it might be related to density. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. Council President Moore, okay, I've already answered that one. Let me see if there are others. So Lawrence, I'm not quite sure how to answer your question. And I'm not quite sure what the acronym ADU stand for. So if you could respond to that real quick, I will respond to you. And I've got about 3 minutes to do it because I will be getting off and to my text. Again, I'm just not quite clear on that. Accessory dwelling units. Oh, okay, got you. Well, I think that, people have been using them there, but the legislation that Mr. Shook put in, if in fact that is to pass, accessory dwelling units are in residentially zoned, some of them single family zoned districts, and that may not allow them to be used for the purposes of Airbnb. So there'll be a lot more discussion. And so I just want to remind people as I wrap up for today, thank you all for your engagement. You can always reach out to my office. Feel free, me and my staff monitor our emails and try to respond or make sure your concern gets to where it needs to get to at fmoore@atlantanga.gov, fmoore@atlantanga.gov. If you don't use email, you can always leave a voice message at 404-330-6052. We monitor our phone messages and respond to those. You are following me now either on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I'm also on Twitter. Please follow me. I do share meeting information, notices from the city, and then other items of interest to you related to the city or related to the things that the city is in relation to. Being in this COVID environment, conversations with the council president is one way that I'm attempting to try to stay connected with you. Please leave me a comment and let you know if these conversations are helpful. And also leave me some suggestions on things that you'd like to hear. Sometimes I have guests on, things that you'd like to hear more about, or a topic that you'd like for me to discuss. Let me know now. And then even if you're watching this as a replay, whether you're watching it live, and we will pick up on it and try to fulfill that wish for you. So please stay safe. We're still in a COVID pandemic. Wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your social distance, and have a great day. Thank you.